Shopify grows your business no matter how far or big you grow. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. Whether you're selling your fans' next favorite shirt or an exclusive piece of podcast merch, Shopify helps you sell everywhere. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S. Allbirds, Rothy's, Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way. Because businesses that grow, grow with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in.
Welcome to The Planted Runner. I'm Coach Claire Bartholic. If you don't have a running injury right now, chances are better than not that you will by the end of the year. While running itself isn't considered a particularly dangerous sport, statistics on running injuries don't paint a pretty picture. Anywhere from 50 to 75% of runners will experience enough pain to affect their running. Sometimes it's just a little strange tweak that is resolved in a day or two, and other times it's something so serious and painful that we might fear our running days will be over for a very long time. Standard protocol for running pain is rest, ice, compression, and elevation, also known as RICE. If it hurts to even walk, let alone run, we'll pop some ibuprofen and declare we need a week off of running, maybe 2 weeks. After a few days, not only is the injury still painful, but we start to desperately miss our running routine. Our daily stress-relieving run has been stolen from us. Why did this happen to me, we wonder? I should probably see a doctor or at least a physical therapist to tell me what's wrong with me and how to fix it. While we wait for the appointment, our very identity as a runner hangs in the balance. But what if everything we've been conditioned to think about pain and injury is wrong? What if we could heal ourselves on our own, faster and more effectively, without ever having to stop running? Let's find out. Welcome to The Planted Runner. I'm Coach Claire Bartholic, and my mission is to help you improve your running, your mindset, and your life with science-backed training and plant-based nutrition. Today, I'm sharing my conversation on pain and performance with co-authors Matt Fitzgerald and Ryan Whited about their book of the same name. We'll explore why what we think about pain and injury is fundamentally flawed, why training, not rest, painkillers, or surgery, is the very best way to heal most injuries, and why our fear and avoidance of pain is making everything worse. Ryan Whited is the founder of Paragon Athletics in Flagstaff, Arizona, and he's a specialist in pain science and physiology. Matt Fitzgerald is an acclaimed endurance sports author, coach, and nutritionist whom I've interviewed 3 times because his work is so compelling and important to what we do as runners. Their book is truly fascinating, and I highly recommend that you read it or at least listen to this conversation before you get injured. Before we get into the details, I'd like to invite you to run with me in my beautiful hometown this fall. September 12th through 15th, 2024, I will be hosting a 4-day running retreat in the Blue Ridge Mountains in Asheville, North Carolina. We'll stay in luxury cabins right on the French Broad River where we can run right out the door. You'll get run coaching, strength training classes, running gait analysis, and more. And of course, it will feature amazing plant-based food and a little nightlife as well. We had so much fun last year that I cannot wait to do it again. It's perfect for adult runners of all ages, paces, and abilities, and you're bound to meet runners just like you. Spaces are very limited and it's first come, first serve, so sign up today at theplantedrunner.com/retreat. I'll be offering early bird pricing until March 15th, so be sure to take advantage of that as soon as you can. I can't wait to run with you this September. At the end of this episode, right after the Mental Strength Minute, I'll reveal this month's winner of our Apple Podcasts review contest. One lucky reviewer will receive a signed copy of my book, The Planted Runner, Running Your Best with Plant-Based Nutrition. If you'd like to win your own copy, write an Apple Podcasts review today. I choose a new winner every month. And now here's my conversation with Ryan Whited and Matt Fitzgerald. Welcome to The Planted Runner, Matt and Ryan.
Thanks, Claire.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us, Claire.
So everybody knows that exercise is good for you. And everyone listening to this show knows that running is good for you, both mentally and physically. But yet the first thing that we do when we feel pain that might be an injury is stop running. And Ryan, you'd like to change that.
Yes, I would like to change that. Pain has been interrupting health for long enough.
So what do you mean by that? Because like pain is our signal to, hey, something's wrong. We're hurt.
It is a signal, but it doesn't necessarily equate to damage, or harm of tissue. So it is information to be used, but it's a tool, merely a tool. Okay,
we're going to get into this because there's going to be a lot of people that are going to have a hard time accepting that. we're taught that, not even taught, but like we're animals. Pain hurts. We want to avoid it. But yet maybe that's not what we should be doing all the time.
Yeah, pain does hurt. That is true. Actually, one of my favorite quotes, and this is kind of comical, about pain is from Roadhouse. And
okay. Roadhouse with Patrick Swayze?
That's right.
Okay, go ahead.
Where he says to the camera, "Pain don't hurt." And I always thought that's hilarious. So pain does hurt, but it doesn't always harm. It is, but we have definitely hardwired our culture to believe that it is a signal that indicates harm and damage to tissue. But it is just not how it works at all. So it's much more loose association between damage and pain.
Yeah, I mean, a common example, well, I don't know how common, but a well-known example is, if somebody has lost a limb, they still might feel pain in that limb. And clearly there's no damage because there's no arm there or no leg there, right? Like, I mean, are there some other examples where pain does not equal injury?
Oh, there's many more examples. Yeah. So even you just finished the book last night. So some of the examples in the book, where very often, you can have like abnormalities in your spine, but are asymptomatic, or abnormalities in your hip and are asymptomatic. It's very common for runners, if they do imaging on, their lower extremity, to have like stress reactions, even neuromas, like things that you would think absolutely that has to be symptomatic, but it's not. So I think 45% of neuromas, which is dang near half, are asymptomatic. Same with, stress reactions, around the same percentage of stress reactions just are asymptomatic. So we can have pain experience without damage, and we can have damage without pain experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's complicated and mysterious, right?
It is complicated.
Yeah. So, the number or the percentage of runners that get injured every year is, it's some people say it's 50%, some people say it's 75%, or some other scary number. I've heard a bunch of numbers. And the common protocol is rice and ibuprofen, and not the food rice, but the acronym rice. Right. And then next step is some arbitrary number of days off, or I'm going to take a week off. I'm going to take 2 weeks off. That's what I'm supposed to do. You want to talk about that?
Sure. Rice, doesn't have much evidence behind it. It's one of those things that's just dogmatically been recycled into our culture. Rest, I try to tell people, if you do have a damaged tissue, how tissue heals. So if you actually have a physical injury, how that tissue remodels is with use. So, and even how we progress psychologically is with use. So sure, on occasion, if something is really, really perturbed, then yeah, obviously you need to let it kind of calm down a bit, but psychologically and physiologically, how things heal is by returning to sport. So in my mind, we've kind of gone about this in such a wrong way.
Yeah. And Matt, you've had some examples of this in your own running. Do you want to talk about how you've treated injuries in the past and how it's worked and how it hasn't worked for you?
Yes. So I used to describe myself as an injury-prone runner. Ryan taught me to no longer describe myself that way. But, my training was interrupted frustratingly often, sometimes by smaller issues. And then I had a handful of kind of major issues, three in particular, that each of which took me out of competing for more than a year, each of which I thought might be quote unquote career ending. And initially, I dealt with injury exactly the same way every other runner did. If it was, beyond a certain threshold, it's not getting worse. It's not getting better. It's getting worse. I would, call an orthopedist or a sports medicine specialist, get imaging done, get a diagnosis, have, treatment prescribed, go into physical therapy. And for all three of those, multi-year major injuries, there was actually no definitive diagnosis ever. I even had knee surgery for one of them. And of course, the surgeon found stuff, because if you poke inside the knee of a lifelong runner, you're going to find stuff. And just as Ryan suggests, it's the post hoc fallacy, where you have pain, you look inside the painful part, you find something, the doc's like, aha, chondromalacia. And, I started running again, and the pain came right back. Thankfully, all three of these major injuries, plus all of the minor ones I had, I was eventually able to overcome. But the way I overcame them was by running, actually, running and strength training. And so the very thing that seemed to, cause the problem also fixed it. Now, it wasn't as simple as just ignoring it and bowling ahead. I had to make modifications, but it was just like this combination of, persistence, patience, adaptability, just like, all right, now, maybe I can't run fast, but I can run slow, or maybe I can't run every day, but I can run every other day, or maybe I need to cross train a little more and run a little less temporarily, or whatever. But I just sort of bootstrapped my way past all of these issues. And so when I met Ryan in 2019 and learned about his training, his treatment method, it just made total sense to me, because I had sort of learned what Ryan knows the hard way through my own experience.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of runners are going to listen to that. And first of all, they're going to say, hallelujah, I can keep running. But then there's the other runners who don't go to the doctor, who don't, get all the treatment that you've described. And they just, like you said, nose to the grindstone, I'm going to run through anything. Clearly, that's not the right option. That's not what we're talking about here.
No, there is a time, to seek some medical advice. If somebody suspects a stress fracture of the femoral neck, or something like that, or if you're of a certain age and a certain gender, and there are things to look for. So yes, if you have something that's persistent and it's not backing off, you need somebody to help you take those sinister things off the table. And then, but once those sinister things, those truly medical things are off the table, then it's a pain experience that there are many tools to work with that.
Mm-hmm. I think as humans, we love labels. We want to label and name everything. So we want to know that our knee injury is a meniscus tear instead of just some mysterious pain in the knee, right? So how does our desire to name our pain get in the way of treating it?
Yeah. So diagnosis is one of those things that, for the most part, drives me crazy.
But we want to know what it is.
Yeah, and it's truly unknowable because there are so many contributing factors to pain experience that it's never singular. So it's never an isolated thing that is causal of your pain, if that makes sense. It's really hard for us to get our heads around because that's not how we've been taught to think about pain. We have this very simplistic linear causation idea of this has caused my pain. And so we look for that thing, like Matt was saying, you look in the knee, you're like, oh, I found it. That's the cause. And then especially if you get an image, picture of your pain, if you get a picture of your pain, that is very confirming. So, but the imaging doesn't show pain. Imaging just shows anatomy.
Right.
And there you can have imaging done, of an asymptomatic person, but with abnormalities in the spine and in the knee and in the hips. The funny thing is all these abnormalities that we've, like you said, we've given them the label as abnormalities. But over many years of research, we've come to find out that those abnormalities very often are more normal than abnormal. Like with hip impingement, it's one of those things that, like a cam deformity or a pincer deformity or a combination, for runners that have struggled with hip pain, that's a lot of times the diagnosis, the cause that's given to them, that they have hip pain. But I think it's around 70% of folks have those abnormalities, but are asymptomatic. And I'm not a statistician, but by my math, that's normal.
Right. Right. So basically what you're saying is a lot of us are walking around with meniscus tears that don't cause us pain, that we have no idea are actually happening. I think there was actually one example you gave in the book. I can't remember if it was the knee or the shoulder, where they imaged both sides and they found almost as many issues, quote unquote, with the healthy side versus the painful side.
Accurate. Yep.
Yeah.
So, if you want to diagnose this, they're going to say that's what's causing your pain. So
this is fascinating, but admittedly, this is a hard sell, right? I mean, doctors, physical therapists, those are the experts. I mean, I am a running coach and I tell people all the time, I defer to your doctor. I defer to your physical therapist. Those are the people who have the fancy degrees, right? So telling people to go to the gym instead of telling people to go to the doctor,
oh man,
that's a hard sell. Matt, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to point out that, the way we think about pain, you sort of open with this, like, everyone knows that, pain, we're animals and pain is pain, but actually, pain is a social construct. And so the way we think about pain is very different from the way our ancestors thought about pain. So it's changed. There's more than one way to understand pain. That's why we have an opioid epidemic, because like
definitely helping.
Yeah. Pain just went from a perception to a pathology, something that was medicalized and considered a problem in and of itself, independent of whatever the pain might be signaling. So in the past, and there are still, like Aboriginal cultures existing today where research has been done on pain as a social construct there, like with less like penetration of Western medical ideas, and those cultures and in all cultures in the past, pain was more akin to fatigue or hunger or sleepiness. Even today, if you're hungry, you don't call the doctor, you eat, and
right.
And we used to treat pain exactly the same way. Like it's not. What Ryan is saying is true. Like very, very often the pain you experience does not mean you're broken. And like every once in a while it does, obviously, just as like your hunger can get to the point where you die.
Right.
Like, in the vast majority of cases, it's just information that can help guide your behavior. So, that changed. And so, this message in our present context sounds very radical. It's like, oh, that's a lawsuit. You're telling athletes not to go to the doctor when something hurts. No, what's radical is telling athletes to go to the doctor every time something hurts. It's just as absurd as telling you to call the doctor when you're hungry. It's like, doctor, I'm so sleepy. Well, go to bed. So it feels different, but it's really not.
So do I have to change my waiver that everybody signs when they sign up with me that says consult a physician first before, starting this exercise program? The same line that's in every single exercise program. I mean, so I can change that now and I'm going to be okay legally.
Maybe keep your waiver.
Okay, we'll keep the waiver.
Well, actually, that's a good point because it gets to the fact that we are operating within a system. And so, you can be right when everyone else is wrong and it can get you in trouble. So, I certainly stand behind our message, but I would also advocate that you as a coach in, our present societal context, keep that that line in your waiver.
I'll be back with my conversation with Ryan Whited and Matt Fitzgerald right after a short break.
Sports stars. They're like superheroes.
But they're actually real.
Which is why we've made a podcast about them. You see,
they've all got a story.
But too many of these stories were cut short.
Kobe Bryant.
Payne Stewart.
Flojo.
Phil Hughes.
Justin Fashanu.
We're writing episodes about all of them.
And sadly, many more.
Death of a Sports Star. A new series from Crowd Network.
Greetings from Evergreen Podcasts. We're rolling out a listener survey and we want to hear from you. The information in the survey will help us gather statistics and in turn make our shows more appealing to advertisers. I know most people don't like ads, but this is one of the only ways our shows make money and help keep their lights on. We promise it will only take a few minutes, but the impact on our podcasts will be tremendous. As a token of our appreciation, we'll randomly select one lucky participant each month to win an exclusive merchandise package from Evergreen Podcasts. Head to evergreenpodcast.com/listenersurvey to help a show and possibly get some free stuff for doing so. We can't thank you enough for the support. Now back to the show.
And now back to my conversation with Ryan Whited and Matt Fitzgerald. So you mentioned in the book that there are 4 truths about pain. So a lot of things we don't know about pain, but there's 4 things we do know. So 1, it's mysterious. 2, it's information. 3, it's individual. And 4, which this is the big one that everybody wants, it's controllable. So let's start with the 4th one first. How do we control our pain, Ryan?
Pain is very changeable, and it's not dependent on your tissue to change, but that's what we relate it to. We think, oh, well, this tissue that's causing my pain has to change in order for my pain to change. But there are a lot of tools to bring to the table to help pain change. Your beliefs. So if you do believe that it's a 1-to-1 ratio of tissue damage to pain level, if you just believe like that has to change in order for my pain to change, then that's going to be a big obstacle. And a lot of those things are like implicit, they're kind of baked into our beliefs about pain. So it's hard to like back out of the thinking, So a lot of times just having somebody to help you change your language, change your beliefs, those kinds of things, believe it or not, because it sounds like psychology. I'm not a psychologist. I just kind of play when it works sometimes. Those things help a lot. Language change is huge because it helps reframe and recontextualize your pain experience. So those are some of the tools that help with the malleability of pain, not just tissue change.
Yeah. And we all know individuals that seem to just sort of be immune from pain. You think of the David Goggins character, like he's just larger than life and does everything, who cares if it's painful or not. But, some people just seem to experience it differently or more. They're more sensitive to it. So should we be trying to desensitize ourselves?
That's a complex question. So we all do have, it is individual, like number 3 says, we all have a unique experience with pain. So to try to use the same tools with everybody is probably a little bit of a mistake, but grossly sure. But when it comes down to in the granular interactions, there's going to probably require a little more fine tuning.
Yeah.
So the David Goggins approach will not work for almost everybody.
True.
In fact, it will probably be a mistake for almost everybody.
Yeah. Well, one concept that is kind of hard to grasp is that strength training, which we know we are purposely damaging our muscles when we lift heavy things. We're doing that on purpose so that they can grow stronger. But how is something that causes muscle damage, how does that help heal pain and, heal tissue and lessen pain? Like, what is going on there?
There's a lot going on. So your efficacy is influenced. There's some descending analgesia so your own nervous system, how you kind of bring down your pain, you tap into it like over and over and over again with strength training. And a lot of people think it's that I'm getting stronger and that's why my back doesn't hurt, but that's not really how it works. There are other things that are influencing it. So it doesn't hurt that you're getting stronger. That's awesome. And there is evidence that strength training, if you do have persistent back pain, your likelihood of having an onset again is reduced, and then also your duration is reduced also. So those folks just tend to do better. The folks that have strength trained. So it's funny because we've given all this terminology, like we brought these ideas to like damaging tissue, but it's just we're adapting tissue. It's changing. But we've brought all these ideas, like it's almost like carryover from modernity. Like when we thought we could just control everything,
right.
It's like Dr. Kellogg worked his way into the medical system 50 years later, and we're still doing ridiculous things. So, yeah. We have an 11-year-old, and he turned his ankle not that long ago, and it was starting to swell. And he said, "Why does it swell?" And I was like, "Well, that's started healing immediately, buddy. Like that's what we do. We're good at that. We heal, and we're very, very good at it. So it's why we're so successful, So we gave it this weird framing. So, yeah.
Yeah. So maybe, so that makes me totally think differently about strength training. So, we shouldn't call it muscle damage, microfiber tears or what, micro tears of the muscles or whatever.
Practicing healing.
Okay, this is starting to be a little new agey woo woo. I'm sure you hear this as a criticism, right? I mean, I'm sure people are like, okay, who is this guy? And he thinks it's all about my language and all about my head. My pain is in my head. Ryan, my knee hurts. Fix it.
Yeah. It's no more absurd to say that pain is all in your head than it is to say that pain is all in your body.
Ooh, I like that.
So we both are absurd. It's too complex to narrow it down to either one of those things.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. So I told my partner that I was coming on this to interview you guys, and he's like, "Oh, great. Could you ask them how to fix my lower back? 'Cause it hurts." So how do you fix a lower back? Fix. Well, I know you love that word, fix.
Oh, I do. That's a great term. Yeah, as we all know, most people will have a significant pain experience with their back at some point in their life. And it's an epidemic. Funny enough, like you go to the doctor, those folks that have those experiences, they're like, yeah, why does it hurt so bad? I haven't been able to get out of bed and go to work, and my relationships is kind of on the rocks. And those folks that you go to see have not had much pain education, which is mind blowing to me. Like, they have had tons of anatomy, but no psychology, no pain education. So they don't even understand like how pain works. So it used to be thought, and I am positive that this is still taught probably, which is mind blowing also, that nociceptors, that they're free nerve endings in our afferent nervous system. So it's like the information coming into the nervous system. Nociceptors were thought to be pain receptors. And most people probably will still refer to them as pain receptors. But that is not what they are. So it's not how it works. And we know that now. So those folks are taught tons of anatomy to explain pain to you, why something hurts to you. And as we covered, if they need to find something, they can. But pain is just much more complex than that. We know that if you have a family member in your immediate family that had significant back pain, that there's a strong likelihood that you're going to have significant back pain, but not because of your biomechanics, because you made some associations with, your back and those experiences, and you sort of baked in some expectancy.
So if your mom has knee pain, you're more likely to have knee pain, not because you inherited her genetics, but because you watched her hobble around.
True story.
That is super, super interesting. Another thing you touched on in the book was fear of pain. Again, we know that we want to avoid pain at all costs. That's our natural reaction. So when we're injured and we have pain, we're afraid of doing the thing that causes pain. Matt, how about you when you were getting back from injury? Were you afraid you were going to re-injure yourself?
Yes, very much so. I spent all too much of my time as a runner running in fear. I go out and I start running, to test a knee that's been hurting, or to test an adductor that's been hurting, and just crossing my fingers and like, please don't hurt, please don't bleed. And it's not a lot of fun. And one of the many benefits of sort of absorbing, accepting, and internalizing Ryan's message is that it really does bring the fear down. And there are at least three benefits to that. One is fear is unpleasant in itself. So there's having pain, and then there's fearing pain. It's like, well, if you can at least get rid of the fear, you feel a little bit better. Something might still hurt. Also, that fear can be self-fulfilling. Right. The more you fear pain, the more likely you are actually going to experience it. So, fear brings down getting over the fear brings down the fear. It brings down the pain. And then it also can modify your behaviors in a beneficial way. When you're less afraid of pain, you're more likely to take the steps that are actually going to help you overcome it, which are, forms of just modified continued activity. So, if you're very afraid of pain, you might stop moving, and that almost never works. You take some time off, you get back into it, and your body's like, I thought we were retired, and the pain comes back or something else starts hurting. But if you try to keep moving and just, again, not bullheaded, but in an adaptive, flexible way, just like, all right, how do I work around and through this? You're more likely to do that if you have less fear, and then you're more likely to get better outcomes. So all kinds of benefits to taking down the fear level around pain.
So it's not just strength training, it's getting back to your sport. So in our case, it's running. We need to run to get healed from, from the injury that was caused by running. That is a tough concept, I think, for some people. They think, oh, running caused my knee pain, I need to stop running. So how does what caused the injury help the injury? I think that's the part that I think most people have the hardest time having, getting their heads wrapped around.
We kind of have to define injury. So it sounds like you're still relating it to like this caused my injury, but you have to think, was this just a pain experience, or was this actual damage? And that recontextualizes it, and I think what Matt was saying, it kind of frees you up to go, this is just a pain experience I'm having, and I can work with it. And it's basically practiced psychological flexibility. You just are putting it into practice where you basically, like Matt said, you gently start working back toward what you want to do. You can use the tools of strength training because of those the benefits of it. It in some cases, I don't think it's dependent, like I've said, on the tissue changing, but all those other psychological factors that come with it, psychological benefits. Practicing those things will help you get back to your activity more quickly, I should say.
And it's kind of, oh, go ahead, Matt.
I was going to say, I think it's helpful to, it's nice actually that like I'm not a scientist, and I learned all this stuff fairly recently because like I was on the other side of I can't wrap my head around this, not too long ago. And I think it helps if you think of pain as a warning, as a message versus as like this, damage signal. So, if you're running and your knee hurts, it's very, very, very likely that you don't have a true injury. But the pain is real, but it's very unlikely that you have an actual injury. So that pain is warning you. It's like, just like when you have like, really severe fatigue, you're 5K from the finish line of a marathon, and you feel like I need to be finished now. It's your body saying, maybe we should slow down a little bit. If you want, it's very much parallel to that. So it's, in a way, it's sort of like your body talking to you. It's like, just letting you know that you're getting close to, too close for comfort to actual damage. Like there is no actual damage yet, but I'm warning you. And so if your knee is talking to you, then guess what? You can talk back to your knee. And so, by sort of like continuing to be active, but also sort of meeting your knee halfway and like, not running as far or not running as fast or not running as often, you're sort of reassuring that knee. It's like, I hear you. I'm going to respect your limits, but I'm also reminding you, I'm a runner. I'm going to stay a runner. So you need to get in line. And I think it starts to make more sense when you think about it that way, just sort of like this kind of mind-body conversation.
Right, right. And there's a couple of running parallels there. Like pain is a threshold. We want to go up to the line, but we don't want to cross it, right? It's your body's way of saying, hey, you've crossed the line. Mm-hmm.
It can just be a liar too.
Okay, yeah.
I had a friend who had an appendectomy a few weeks ago. So, and it was funny because he described this whole event to me, and he read the book not that long ago, and he was like, I don't know, I couldn't explain what was going on. So he said he had some pain, but it was pretty weird and not very distinct. And then he just thought, I think I need to go to the doctor. So he actually ended up going to the ED, and had an emergency appendectomy. So, but the curious thing is weeks later, when he went to return to running, he went running, got home. And this was, after he was done healing, he had been released, no restrictions, got home and had severe abdominal pain. And he thought, what is going on now? Right. And so he actually, and I think he's probably right around 40. So he goes back to the ED And he literally can't get off the floor at the ED. And he's saying, this is the most pain that I've ever been in. And he was a pro athlete. He was on the U.S. climbing team. So, he literally can't get up off the floor, and he's telling them this is the most pain I've ever been in, and I'm not sure what I've done. So, they end up getting him into bed, and they start an IV. As soon as they start an IV, and this has been going on for hours because he put it off for a while. He said, as soon as they started an IV, he just went, where did it go? And he was laying there going, I don't understand. And it literally just went away. So this profound pain experience that he was having just went away. They went ahead and checked him out medically for, just in case. And there was nothing that was found. But the fact that he had a previous experience, definitely contributed to that, but he said his actual appendicitis didn't hurt like that. So it's just one of those things. It's one of those things that can be pretty fuzzy. So, you just have to like we've been saying, be aware of it. But don't live by it, and don't put it above your health. Like, we've created a system that prioritizes the absence of pain more than your health.
Right.
And that's not how that should work. If your health is going to the back burner because of the presence of pain, something's upside down. Right.
So we should not fear pain. We should respect it and not try to avoid it, which I think as athletes, we can kind of understand. Obviously, running sucks a lot, right? Running's hard. Running's painful. Even when we're healthy and we don't have any injuries, running fast hurts. There's an effort-based pain, if you call it, that we're sort of used to, right? So I think we can understand that there's some pain involved. So is there a kind of simple recipe, if you could, of how to get better at, as you say, owning your pain? How do you get better at being okay with this?
Reframing it, like we've been talking about, is like step number one. Just bringing a whole different context to the experience is step number one. And realizing, like, this doesn't mean I'm damaged is a great jumping off place. And then practicing that with your language. Build it into your language. Build it into your thinking and the processing. That is really, which I guess really boils down to just practice, you're practiced thinking about it. So, yeah.
We can only practice it when we are hurt, though, right? Can we practice this before we actually feel pain?
You can practice it in conversation, for sure.
Okay.
Like when you are having a conversation like we are, and somebody brings up pain, you can help your reframing by helping their reframing. So by changing the language around it, and culturally, like, that's what we've done in a negative way. So why don't we try to do it in a positive way?
Okay. So really the way to deal with it, like physically deal with it, because again, people are going to be like, okay, tell me exactly what to do for my back pain. My back hurts. Tell me exactly what to do. You won't do that, right? You won't say, do a bunch of RDLs or whatever. You won't give them a specific exercise, right? So we should just try a few things. If they're painful, back off. Try a few other things. If those are painful, back off. Or can you give me a prescription?
Yeah, you could say there are a lot of options. Like I've said, directional preference is, so a lot of the therapies that are used are really just directional preference, meaning,
which means what?
So if you go in and somebody uses the McKinsey method, which they've paid thousands of dollars to learn this method, and now they've made it sellable, and they're like, oh yeah, this is a very specific thing, but it's not. Really, all you're doing is not doing the thing that hurts for a second and slowly trying to return to it. If it's forward flexion that is provocative to your back, then maybe for a second, don't forward fold.
Okay.
But you could also forward fold if you lay on the ground and put your feet on the wall. That's forward folding. It's just in a different plane.
Mm-hmm.
So you can change the plane. You can mess with your mind a little bit. So there's all kinds of research on illusion and pain. So where they use VR goggles. So people with persistent neck pain, profound persistent neck pain, they'll say, "Oh, I can turn my head 5 degrees before it's too much for me to bear." But then they'll put the VR goggles on, deceive them about how far they're rotating their head. And they will rotate their head greater than 20 degrees without any symptoms. But it's because they've been tricked and about how far they're rotating their head. So you can do those same little things with yourself. Those same little, like closing your eyes are some of the things you can do, because you're not sure exactly where you are in space. You can do all kinds of things. You can even use a mirror. I mean, everybody knows about mirror therapy. There's nothing exclusive, about mirror therapy.
I don't know what mirror therapy is. What's mirror therapy?
Sorry. Mirror therapy. So mirror therapy is for folks that have a painful limb that they haven't been able to get help with. You can put a mirror in the hand on one side, that will say the unaffected hand on one side, and watch the mirror, and it will convince your brain that it's the other appendage. So you can bring down the pain just by tricking your brain into thinking it's an appendage, the other appendage. The other trick with that is you can do. This is a pretty cool illusion. There's lots of these illusions online if you want to go look at them for resolving pain. But they will have somebody put their hand on either side of the mirror, or on one side of the mirror, brush a rubber hand. So this hand is rubber, but your brain can see it. And the actual hand is covered on the other side. And then you will start to sense the brush on the other side. And so you will actually have the sensation of being brushed on your hand, even though it's a rubber hand. So
wow,
there are tons of illusions like this. Yeah.
That is fascinating. Well, I think your book is definitely going to be eye-opening for some people. I think half the people like me are going to be like, "This is awesome. This is what I thought the whole time." And then the other half are going to be like, "Yeah, I'm going to go to the doctor. Yeah, I don't know about this guy." Right? I mean, do you get that? Have you been getting that reaction?
From some, I think actually it probably rings true with most, probably lands right with most folks though. Because many of us have had that experience, where you've just been frustrated and you're like, wow, I am really having a hard time here and not getting much help. And it's not because, those folks that they're going to see aren't trying to help.
Right.
It's just that they don't have the skills that are necessary a lot of times.
Yeah.
So I hope it lands right with most folks.
Yeah, I think it will. And one thing that I was happy to see in the book that you mentioned, as you can tell, I'm a redhead. And what does that tell you about my pain tolerance and sensitivity? Any guesses?
Right. Yeah, it's a little higher.
Yes. Weird that both. I'm more sensitive and more tolerant. I don't know. I've had kids, and that was painful. And run marathons, and that's painful too. So.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, if you have more experience with it, then it has to be higher, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're up against it more.
Or maybe it's because I believe, because I am a redhead, that I do have a higher tolerance, that my expectations are already higher, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. Well, this has been a great conversation. I really recommend that. Let me grab the book here. So if people are watching that, everybody grab this book, Pain and Performance. Really. The other thing I did want to point out was that Matt did the writing here. And of course, in Matt's style, it reads like a novel in some parts, which is really fun and unexpected. So kudos to you, Matt.
Thank you.
Yeah. And where can we get it? It's out now, right?
It is. It's available on Amazon. It's any bookseller. So, yeah.
Perfect.
If you have a local bookstore, it's probably there. Or they can get it.
Great. And if people want to learn more about you, Ryan, where should they go? Or they can sign up for training, or tell us all about that.
They can go just to Paragon Athletics website. So, you can, my bio is there. Obviously, you're going to learn more about me in the book. But also, you can book an appointment virtually. We do a lot of virtual work nowadays. So, because
fantastic.
Most of our work is conversational, like this, and exercise prescriptions, it's very easy to do that work.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, to both of you.
Thanks, Claire.
Thanks so much for having us.
And now it's time for the Mental Strength Minute. Fortify your mind in 60 seconds or less. Today's topic is expect the worst. When you think a race or a tough workout is going to be really, really hard, it can cause you to feel some pre-race anxiety. That is not a pleasant feeling, of course, but if you can get through that and start the workout, you will most likely find that your fears of disaster don't actually happen. The run isn't as hard as you predicted, and you end up feeling great. On the other hand, if you predict that things are not going to be so tough, and it turns out they really are, it can be demoralizing enough to slow you down or even bring you to a stop. So pre-race or workout, remind yourself that this is going to be really, really hard, but you're strong enough to get through it. This month's winner of our Apple Podcast review contest is Maxi Tish, Maxxytsh, who wrote, refreshing, 5 stars. As a runner that has listened to many different running podcasts, coming across this one has been refreshing. Love the variety in topics, the guests, and the emphasis on a plant-based diet behind all of our running success. Your mission, Maxi Tish, is to email me at claire@theplantedrunner.com with your U.S. shipping address, and your signed copy of The Planted Runner will be on its way. If you would like to win next month, all you have to do is write an Apple Podcast review. I read every single one and choose a new random winner. Thank you for listening to The Planted Runner, part of the Evergreen Podcasts Network. Don't forget that you can win a copy of my book for leaving an Apple Podcast review, so be sure to write yours right after your run today. Reviews are the #1 way to boost this show's reach, and it's a great way to tell me what you'd like to hear next, because I read every single one. Have a great run today.
Hear Her Sports is a podcast for everyone who loves stories by and about women striving to improve and make a difference in their lives. I am your host, Elizabeth Emery, a former professional cyclist. In every episode, I introduce a female athlete or woman in the business of sport through a thoughtful conversation about who they are and the terrific work they're doing. My guests and I explore the glorious and frustrating issues in sports, history, equity, training, nutrition, and so much more. Join us for inspiration, for community, and for love of being a strong, athletic woman.